How's it going, guys? So in today's tutorial, I wanted to do a kind of like showcase of 5 tools that I like to use basically to inspire creativity. So I've picked up 5 tools that I've been using a lot recently, and I figured I'd do a kind of like showcase of what they are and how I'd use them, just in case anyone was looking for a new tool or had something that they wanted to achieve but wasn't sure which tool to achieve. So essentially I wanted to do kind of like a showcase of what's out there and what might be relevant to your interests. So I picked 5 tools that can be very good for inspiration and creativity for minimal house or various genres, and you'll see as I go through like all the potential use cases for them. So yeah, I'm basically going to be picking out 5 tools, and I might do follow-ups depending on if people want to see more kind of tools. And I basically just picked my personal suggestions, so let me know if that's something you'd want to see. But anyway, without further ado, let's just get into it. So number 1, you might recognize the company and the name. So anyone that's seen the quick baseline tutorial or downloaded the tool from the website, you'll see that this tool is here, and this is Sting by Skinnerbox, and basically they did like an updated version, which I personally feel is much better. It isn't free, unfortunately, like this one was, but I feel like it just has like the features I was looking for from Sting. So I figured I'd throw that in first because like obviously I have done a totally different tutorial on it. So check that out if you want. But essentially, like I'll just play it now. So it's kind of like the same principles, but I've used this instead. So I've got the key rack, the instrument, and then you've got like the MIDI generation. So you've got stuff that's the same, like the pattern generator. So you've got that, you've got density stays the same. The transpose, which is in the other version, it only allowed you to go up 6, which was quite bizarre. This one allows you to go up 24, which is very handy because sometimes the MIDI patterns generate at like too high or low an octave, so it's useful to be able to transpose that within the tool. So you've got density, transpose, length. You've basically got all the same features but better, plus additional ones like swing here. You had like 100, and you've got the same. So like it's basically an improved version. So like if I get rid of that, I'll keep it open just so you can see. But I just find this tool so much better because you've got the normal features, the transpose is better. You're able to pick like a type of pattern, which is quite interesting. I have no idea what half of these mean, but I'm assuming that's acid, and in terms of these, you've basically got the like, different melody types, essentially, which is quite cool. And I think it's like how random it is as well. So that's interesting. You've got like variation, you've got the swing, similar to that. You've got the sequence, and you've got probably the most handy thing I reckon this tool does, which is basically previously, as I showed on that other tutorial, you'd have to like bounce the MIDI out that you wanted to use. but now you can just basically hit. If I just hit convert, I think that's worked. Yeah, so if you hit convert, you can basically just load up all the patterns that you've generated, which is just incredibly handy. And you could almost like jam multiple patterns and then switch between them, which is something you might not do when you record the MIDI out, because you might record the MIDI out as like your that's the end type thing. Like I'll change it myself in the clip, but here you can like literally just jam multiple patterns and choose from the best. If you work like that. So that's basically TimeSting, which basically works the same as the other sting tool, but like slightly improved. So if you haven't seen the other video, you can still get that for free. I think this one comes with a bunch of other tools. It's like max £30 or something, but it's a very handy tool, I would say. And I would even like, I'd probably use that before I'd use the other one. Unfortunately, you still have to you can use like the transpose, like the pitch. Unfortunately, you still have to load some kind of like stay in key rack, like the one I have. You still have to load that basically to keep the pattern in key. Unfortunately, they've not built that in, but it's still a good tool. Like if I just like so you can just hear, like, I've not got a lead pattern here, but it's kind of maybe where I'd go if I wasn't able to draw it in or just wanted a quick way to draw it in. Number 2, which is probably my favorite, is Survey. It's a Max for Live external device. I think it's paid, but it's basically like, how do I think of it? It's like kind of like you've got like Max for Live devices like LFO, which basically moves a parameter up and down according to like the wave. You've got like envelope follower, which will follow based on the sound source, but this one's kind of like a step sequencer for automation is kind of how I think of it. So I'll play this sound, I'll just loop it. It's quite quiet, so I'll just turn it on. That's probably why it's quiet. Okay, so you've essentially got this pad sound here, and I'm showing on particular instruments, but just bear in mind you can get creative with them. So I've got this pad sound, and what I essentially want to use is this tool, because I want to automate loads of different parameters over time. So in Survey, if you open it up, you'll see two views. So we'll use channel for now. And stages is basically like how many steps of the sequencer. So if we go for like a classic 16th sequencer, and we go for channels is like the amount of parameters you're going to automate. So just to show, I will map this, and I'll turn on sequencer mode here, and you'll see it flicks through, like it cycles. And then here's the two different modes. You basically you can draw it in yourself, and here's where the magic happens. You basically have a parameter that's moving, so every step out of the 16 steps is something different, which can create some very wacky textures, including like a sound which is quite, like, you hear quite a lot in Minimal House. So if I play it, so that's just the filter that's moving, there's nothing else, and the creativity comes when you just start mapping everything. I think there is actually a free version of this as well, which is like limited based on how many channels you can use, but you're already beginning to see like how much potential there is. So I can essentially, I've mapped just one parameter here, and here's all the different changes. So down low is going to be down here, and up here is going to move up. If I just do a kind of like sweep, see it's moving up. If I'm on the right one, I'm on the right one now, see it moves up. But I like to randomize. So you can basically randomize for just the stage or everything when you begin mapping over stuff. You can choose the rate of the sequencer as well. So you basically choose how quickly it moves. I personally prefer 16s because it's like a quick movement, but it all really depends. So now if I start going for more creativity, I can map. I'll map this frequency. The dry wet. And some other stuff. I like to map like these modulation settings as well as the dry wet. It's quite nice. I'm not a fan of that. I'll probably just keep that ad. And then you can just, it's endless really. I've got a chain here, and I could just keep randomizing stuff for like more movement on my audio effects. So, and then you're not even limited to audio effects either. You can literally map like any parameter. So like even on this synth itself, like if I just randomize the stage, I'll just try and find it. I'll randomize all of them. See, that sounds rubbish, but you get what I mean. Like you can literally map anything. So like I would tend to use it on quite a lot on like synth elements, so like pads, as we see in this example. But basically anything you kind of want to add some movement to. So a pad could be a good example because it's like typically a static sound, but like anything you would want to automate over time according to like a step sequencer, like even like the chords in this example maybe. That's like one use of survey. There's one thing to note is like when it's active, you basically the thing to note is the sample playback here doesn't stop according to like when you play back your own stuff. So when I start this note now, it'll be different from when I play it now, because it will be at a different point in the sequence. So essentially, if you want randomization, you could quite literally keep it going regardless. But that means that every time you listen to the element, it's going to be different, which is probably not what you're wanting. So the thing you would probably do once you found something that you like is bounce it out and resample it. So yeah, that's just like a note in terms of like the downside of this plugin. And then you don't just have to use it on melodic elements. There's like potential here with other stuff. So here, if you're familiar with like selector kits, I talked about in the Romer tutorial. Basically selector kits are like Ableton kits or ones you can make yourself, where you can flip between different samples. In this case, it's like the same, so it's like percussion, but you can do it for hats, you can do it for all sorts. And so like another use you could use it for is to flick through samples according to a grid. And I could get like I could create some quite interesting rhythmic sequences here just by like altering various parameters over time, because I feel like a lot of creativity comes when you're not afraid to tweak those parameters, but it can be a bit of a pain to go in and manually automate loads of random stuff. So these kind of tools like Survey help you kind of reduce the pain of that for you. Because I probably by instinct would not think to transpose it like that, but it's like the random results like that just work so well. And yeah, so it's an interesting tool essentially, and you can use it for all sorts. And you can even like, if you have like a hi-hat pattern with like a sustain, you can automate the decay. And in that instance, it sounds quite random. So you'll hear like when I'm stopping and starting, it sounds different every time, which is why I'm saying to resample. But you can hear like the creative potential with basically using Survey on either instruments or on audio effects or both. So that's kind of like the second one. Number 3. So some of you might be familiar with a developer called Alex Kidd. He basically does a lot of like Max for Live based plugins, and recently his own VST as well. So it's a lot of like MIDI sequencer type things and basically useful devices, kind of like I'm showing in this video. So one device I've started using a lot recently is called Beat Shaker, and unfortunately it's not a standalone, but it's still, I think it's around the £20 mark. But essentially it's like a beat shaker, and you've got like different types of kits. So you've essentially got a MIDI device, like Max for Live. This is the device, which basically changes sounds, and then you've got I think there's like 3 different packs. Each pack comes with a different like drum rack, and that drum rack is basically been designed to work with the tool, which is probably why it's not standalone. But essentially you can use it to like switch up instruments. So I'm aware of a tool called, I think it's like randomize. There's a Max for Live tool which is like, you can basically use it to randomize loads of different things, kind of like what I showed as Survey, but it's more of like a, it's not sequence based, it's more of like a click on it and change loads of different like sounds, so like drum samples. So that's essentially what this is. I'll link the free one as well alongside it because they both kind of do similar things, but this one's kind of interesting because it works with kits and the sounds have been selected well, and you also get MIDI in each of the packs as well. It's all been carefully considered, but essentially it's a useful tool because you can load the MIDI in, you can have your rack, and you can basically just addition loads of different similar sounds. So I can hit straight here, and I've accidentally ended up mapping it. Hang on, we'll just turn that off. We'll unmap that, I don't want it. But essentially, yeah, you can essentially just so it's kind of helpful in loads of different ways. Obviously, you can have the MIDI, which is helpful in itself because it gives you like patterns to work off. You can have the samples as well. But the thing, or essentially what the tool is designed for, is like quickly additioning sounds, without the kind of hassle of swapping them out. Like if you're using single clips for your drums, you'll probably be swapping them out, and you can use this kind of tool here to swap out samples, or you'll be dragging and dropping, and then you might not like a kick, and then you'll drag and drop a new one in, and that it's like very minor seconds that can add up, to be fair. So here you've essentially just got a tool where you've got all your sounds for a drum rack, and you can quickly swap them all at once or individual ones, and then you can addition the kind of like 4 main parts of a drum, which are like kick, snare, /clap, hi-hat, and perc. So yeah, it's a pretty handy device, especially if you're like working in drum racks. It basically just means you don't have to constantly look in your browser, look in a folder, drag. You basically have a bunch of decent samples and a tool which you can have to basically quickly addition those those samples, sorry. So that's number 3. So here we have, I don't think I've actually done a tutorial on this, but it's a tool that I put out on my website not too long ago, which is basically just works with like granular synthesis. So you can essentially take any sound and you can chop it up into its like respective granules. Just like when you do like vocal chops, by like reducing it down into different elements, like different syllables and stuff, you're basically taking the granules from that sound. And each sound has some kind of tone, even like drums and stuff. So here I've loaded, I think it was like a cowbell. I'll take the effect off. It's like an effects type hit. Like I think it was like an electro tom or something, I can't even remember, like. But I basically have this rack here, which I basically set up, which is like essentially a creative tool for allowing you to take sounds from sounds is how I think of it. So I have this tool here, and I basically can drop any sample in, and I can kind of find a part of the sample I like. So I'll just what I'll do is I'll just basically on every, if you use the sampler, you can turn on loop mode, and you can essentially loop a small part of that sound, which is how this works. And then I've essentially mapped what I deem as like the most important parameters. And it's basically just cycling through that one part. So you might be familiar with doing that with like pads and stuff. So you might start with something like this. And then you can basically just change the start time. And if loop's not on, it doesn't sound very natural. There'll be clicks and all sorts of glitches. So if you turn loop mode on, and then you basically just have like, it'll start from there, but then it'll start looping from here, essentially, so it'll still play that bit. And then you can speed up the sample, which in turn like raises the pitch. And then this is what I'm meaning about like it kind of having a tone. Albeit very slight, but it's still got some kind of tone. So like, I'll mute this. Yeah, you can hear, you basically just taken, in this case, a drum sound, and you can play with anything, and you basically just chopped it up into like different granules, different sounds that you can use. And then, so I've basically mapped what I deem as the most important parameters. I can transpose it on my keyboard. And I find that playing it back at different octaves is quite handy. And then various transpose filters, because you can get quite nasty sounds. Like a bit of a, like a dubstep womp. So basically, this tool kind of enables you to kind of get a whole bunch of abstract sounds, and I refer to it as like sounds within sounds. And the creative possibilities are endless, really, with this. Like, obviously, you probably won't get as polished a sound as like a plugin or a sample, like just using the sample, but it can be like quite a creative way to get like textures and like various sounds. Like there's just so many sounds you can get from within the tone of sounds, and basically these sounds will be pretty raw, but they're very unique and abstract. Like when you think of certain producers, the one that comes to mind for me is a producer called Swaley. Like he's really good at sampling, but there's a lot of like interesting textures within his music that like would be hard to figure out unless you went down these kind of routes. And I feel like there is some form of like granular synthesis within some of those sounds. So yeah, it's basically another creative tool you can use. It's one of mine. So if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to check it out and support me. So yeah, that's kind of like that one. Another thing, like just talking of the tool itself, because it's quite hard to demonstrate when I'm just playing notes, is you can like you can basically use the LFOs and various match tools to like, there's just so much endless potential with these kind of things. It's like really good for creating like textures. Yeah, that's that tool. Obviously I could be here forever demonstrating different uses, but I hope that's kind of given you an overview of at least how that one works. And the final one, which is a lot quicker, is another one of mine, which is Resonator Selecta. So if I had to hazard a guess, I'd probably say one of the least used effects, at least that I see people, like when people are using effects and stuff, is Resonator, which is, if I just load it up in its normal form, basically just, I'll mute this as well. It's kind of like a way to make something harmonic. So this is just a rhythmic loop. Rhythmic slash vocal. It basically takes like the key like fundamentals and basically makes anything melodic. I think that's like kind of how it works. But so you can kind of like add chords to this. Which is quite cool for like creating chord-based stuff, this effect. So what my rack is essentially just the effect, but with all the parameters, all the presets mapped. And I'm pretty sure it's free as well. So I'll just play it now and you'll see. So basically, the important ones here are dry, wet. You see how much of the effect is coming in, just like I literally just showed. But I tend to just have it up at 100 because I don't like the results when it's not, but you can still get quite creative with it. And then you can have the note. I'll go to preset number 1. So I can have it on C to match my other. So yeah, you'll see basically it just turns like something rhythmic into something harmonic, melodic, one of them. Something with a bit of, you know, bit of substance. So it can be another creative way to generate like synth parts. And then there's various presets which, like I said, are like mapped to the presets in Grid Enable Tim, and you can change the note. So the kind of key takeaway with this tool is you should try and like use the rhythmic sources, and like I find that the best results come from the loops that have interesting rhythms, not just like your standard on the grid 16ths, that kind of thing. Like, because it'll make it into a chord type pattern, but it will just be a 16th chord pattern, which just isn't like interesting, if you kind of get what I mean, compared with this, where the transients and the rhythms are all like making it have its own characteristic. So yeah, that's going to be out on that one. I hope you found it somewhat useful in terms of tools that you might not have considered or heard about. I'll link all them down below, including my own ones, so you have an easy point of reference. I'll also link our Ableton Tools bundle, which basically has the 2 last tools I included and plenty more, which are also available for free, but it can be a bit of a pain downloading all of them separately. So if you want to support me, a nice easy way to get all the tools, then that will also be linked. Do let us know in the comments if you want to see more of these kind of like tool demonstration type things and possible use cases for them, because I appreciate like it can be hard knowing what to get when there's so many tools out there. So I'm happy to do like demos and show like where you deploy them if there's enough interest. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that one there. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you in the next one.